Welcome to Va-Dor, Touch of Torah this Tuesday evening. Welcome all. It's April 11th, and tonight we have Rabbi Barry Silver along with all of our participants, and we're going to be discussing Leviticus Shemini. Take it away, Rabbi.
Thank you so much. Tonight we read, as Sharon says, from Shemini. The passage is mostly about the rules of kashrut. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to ask others what they think about keeping kosher, whether it's necessary, should we still do it? What do you think of people who keep kosher? What's your opinion? So I'm going to ask if anybody has any thoughts about that, and then I'll be glad to share some of mine. Sure. So anybody want to start the ball rolling? What do you think about keeping kosher? Go ahead, Jenny. You're muted.
I'm muted?
Now you're good. Okay,
I'm
go ahead.
Good. Okay. I've never kept kosher. And my family were Reformed and we never kept kosher. But my mother's sisters and her side kept kosher. And it really doesn't matter to me if somebody wants to keep kosher, that's up to them. But I never have. So I really never participated in anything like that.
So you place no value judgment on it. You don't think you're
No.
more Jewish? Are they
No.
more Jewish because they keep kosher?
No, I don't feel that way at all.
And you're not less Jewish because you're not keeping kosher?
No, I'm not.
Do you think are they wasting their time?
No, because I think each person has a right to do what they want to do. And if they feel that it's necessary for them and it's their belief system, that's fine with me.
Well, I'm not talking about fine with, I'm just saying that, I mean, obviously everybody has the right to do whatever they want. So if somebody wants to spend their entire day playing video games, they have the right to do that. The question is that a productive way of spending your time? If somebody wants to eat foods and restrict themselves to a very drastically reduced diet, let's forget about kosher. Let's say they write off 90% of the foods that normal people eat just because somebody told them to do that. Sure, they have the right to do it, but my question is, does it make sense to you? Do you think they're wasting their time? Is this an undue restriction they're placing on themselves, or is there some purpose to it, some redeeming value to it? Obviously, you don't do it, so for yourself, you don't think so. Or is that too difficult a question? You don't want to.
No, it's not. It's not too difficult to question. I actually do believe people are wasting their time doing a lot of these things, but
I happen to agree with you. It's not politically correct to say that because most people don't want to be judgmental, but I happen to agree with you.
Good.
Anybody who else wanted to weigh in on this? Go ahead, Valerie.
Well, I think at this point, I mean, where we have been Reformed, my father came from an Orthodox family that they kept kosher, and my mother had to, teach him the right way of eating like an American. But funny as it seems, he would never want to eat pork or bacon, and yet he went to a Chinese restaurant and had spare ribs. That always boggled my mind. Many years and years ago, before we had the food processing, there was trichinosis when you had the milk and the meat together and the way it settled in the stomach, and it was for health reasons, and I appreciate that, but that is no longer, in my opinion, and the medical opinion, the case. Having said that, as I said, my niece is Chabad, and she's kosher. She has 2 kitchens in her house. To me, that's just going way over the deep end, but I could see where a vegan or a vegetarian, for health reasons, would stick to a specific diet or a gluten-free diet. That's medicinally required. Kosher is just a choice. It's just a lifestyle.
Right.
And originally, kosher means clean because of the way food was handled. No refrigeration, no homogenization. There was no processing mechanism. So there was diseases associated with certain types of food. I could understand how it came about. I don't understand why medically
Yes.
speaking, it's still necessary. It's a lifestyle. I respect it, but I don't see the purpose of it at this point.
Well, actually, to some people, it's not a choice at all. It's a commandment from God. So they don't have any choice in the matter because they believe God ordered it, so they have to do it.
Well,
So it's not like they're
that's
just,
another story completely.
well, that's why they do it. They're not, they didn't wake up one day and say, well, I'm going to choose a kosher lifestyle because I think that makes sense to me. They do it, usually the Orthodox do it because they think God commanded it or God wants them to do that. Who else wants to jump in? Anybody? Alan, Gloria, you want to mention anything? Go ahead, Alan. You're on. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little interested when you say that's why the Orthodox do it. I think the reason that the Orthodox do it is because they're indoctrinated from a very, 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 very young
Right.
age. Do it.
Right.
It's not like they've ever had real choice or any, especially the women. I mean, it's incredible. So I think that they don't have a choice, Rabbi.
The women don't.
Well, especially the women, but I think
Yeah,
even the
they end
men.
up,
I mean,
right. They
the
do a
men
lot
are
of the
brought
work.
up.
Right.
The women have it worse, but the men are also brought up. They're taught from when they were babies that this is the way it is and this is the way it has to be. And if you want to be devout and go, get higher and higher and higher, just follow the rules and make sure everybody around you is following the rules. And I don't know. I think it's sad.
Gloria, what do you think, Gloria? You're on mute. You got to hit that thing on the bottom. There you go.
Okay.
We hear you.
Okay. No, I agree with what has been said. And it is a way of life that people follow and they will stick to it because of their beliefs. And they have a right to do that. That's how I feel. You live the way you feel you want to live.
Right.
And I am not kosher.
Well, again, everybody has the right to do whatever they want. My question is there a purpose to it? Does it make sense? Is there a good reason to do it? I think we have Lena on the line. I think she's calling in, maybe. I don't see her picture, but Lena, are you able to converse with us? You're muted right now. All right, it looks like she might stay that way. Lena, if you want to jump into the conversation, if you can figure out how to unmute yourself, be my guest. Go ahead, Sharon. What's your opinion?
Well, I was raised in a kosher home, and all my life, while I was at home, we were kosher, and I'd help my mom and all that. And when I got married and went off to my own home, I kept kosher for a few years, and then it just got too much for me. It just was, but I don't eat pork, I don't eat bacon, I don't eat any ham or anything like that. If I get meats, if I buy meats, I buy kosher meats, but I don't have a problem eating a cheeseburger or something like that, which, might offend certain people, but I just don't, I find it difficult to drink a glass of milk if I'm eating meat, but, other than that, but it's funny. I was watching HGTV the other day, and they have this show called House Hunters, and they're always looking for, they give the people a choice of 3 homes that they take them to. And they picked a Jewish family. I can't remember what area it was. Oh, it was Jacksonville, Florida, and they were moving down from up north. And they wanted to have 2 sinks and 2 ovens and all this. And of course, they couldn't find a home with that. But they did find a house that had a big kitchen, big enough, and it had the sink with the 2 halves that you usually, wash the dishes in one and put the things to dry in the other. But she said she was going to use the one for the dairy and the one for meat, the little tiny sinks. And the kitchen was big enough that she said later on she was going to add another oven so that she could do her 2 ovens and have 2 dishwashers and all that. And I just thought that was the first time I'd ever seen that on like that in a public setting, to pick a Orthodox family for that show. So I thought that was very progressive of House Hunters and HGTV to include that. So, that was interesting. But anyhow,
Yeah,
I think it's
right.
up to them, whatever they want to do. I think it is up to the people. at this point in my life, I don't see any real need for it, but I do, like I said, I get kosher meat if I do buy meat, which is very rare. Maybe once every other month I'll buy something, but we usually don't eat meat in the house. So, but I think it's up to people, whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Well, a number of people have said that. It's up to people to do what they want. And obviously they have the right to do what they want. My question is, does it make sense? Are they making decisions that help their lives in any way? Are they going through a lot of inconvenience for no good reason? Usually most people don't judge others because it's considered to be impolite, politically incorrect. I think it's helpful to evaluate everything that people do.
I do too.
Because I think that way we can achieve our highest potential. If we just do things by rote without thinking about why, then a lot of times we do things that don't make sense, and we might spend countless hours. You can't eat out with certain people. Like somebody invites you out to eat. Oh, you can't go there. You can't do this. Your kids can't eat with you. You can't eat with them. It's very inconvenient, and it's very restrictive. And to me, to go through all of that without any good reason, it's just it doesn't enhance people's life or their happiness. Of course, they have the right to do it, just like somebody has the right to eat donuts all day and jeopardize their health. The question is it helpful? Is it a smart thing to do? So I had somebody somebody came to Va-Dor, and we were at the Oneg, and she said she kept kosher. So I said, why? That's just how I am. So she says, because of tradition. So I said, well, where's that tradition from? She said, well, it's from Jewish tradition. I said, well, it's not in the Bible. The Bible doesn't say anything about mixing milk and meat. So what traditions are you getting this from? So she said, I don't know, that's what my parents did. So I said, well, it seems like you're going through a lot of trouble to do something just based on a tradition that you don't know where it comes from. So she was very offended. She said, you're really offending me and insulting me, and I don't really appreciate that. So I said, I thought I was just trying to engage in conversation. I wanted to understand why you're doing it, and I thought maybe you'd be interested in exploring your reasons for it. But I'm sorry if I offended you. But she didn't know where the tradition came from, and she didn't know any reason for it. She just did it because it was a tradition. Now, my father taught me, he's a progressive Reform rabbi. He taught me, don't do anything just because it's a tradition. Do something that's a tradition that also makes sense. He wasn't against traditions. He liked Jewish traditions. We had a lot of traditions, but we only continued those traditions that, first of all, we understood why we were doing it. And secondly, it made sense to us and it enhanced life or understanding or spirituality in some way. But just to do something as a tradition, that's acting robotically and mechanically and a lot of times irrationally. And so I don't think that's terribly helpful. But a lot of people are very offended if you ask why they do things. And I have to admit, I have helped a lot of people explore why they do things. And I've also offended quite a few people. There was somebody on the Zoom call that had been coming on for a while. And the person said, well, I stopped coming because I felt my views weren't welcome. And so I said, what gave you the ideas that your views weren't welcome? So this person sent me a video of a Torah talk from a while back. And he said, listen to this part right here. And he had me scroll right to the point where I was speaking. So I was very curious, like, what did I say that made him feel that way? So what it was I was saying that I didn't see any evidence that there was a personal God. And I said that for me, there's a creative power out there that's changing things from what is into what could be. There's a creative power that's in everything. It unites everything. It transcends everything. But the God of the Bible, I don't see that. I don't see this power ordering genocide and doing things like that. And then I said, of course, this is my opinion, but I just don't see it. And so I still I couldn't figure out, like, what did I say that made him feel like he wasn't welcome? Every time we were on, I always say, what do you think? What do you think? What's your view?
Right,
So
right.
why he was saying that I don't welcome other views, I don't know of other rabbis who kind of do what I do, just invite people in who have different opinions, interfaith things. If I'm giving an inspirational message and you don't agree, you can just tell me you don't agree. So I don't know why, but then it dawned on me. He said in a subsequent email, he says, well, apparently you don't welcome believers. So I said, I'm not sure what you mean by a believer. I said, but my views are different than the classic traditional believer, but they're all welcome. And then I got it. The problem that this person had was I made that person feel uncomfortable because that person had a belief, but didn't have a strong belief in it. And I was kind of like rattling the belief or shaking on a security belief that the person had. And it made them feel uncomfortable to have it questioned. Because I have quite a few people, if they really are strong believers, not based on logic or reason, but they just believe like that God's taking care of them or something else. And I pose a different view, even if I welcome all the other views, they don't want to hear that. And I've had quite a few people tell me that. I've even had people tell me, I really like you. I think you're funny, you're interesting, whatever. I admire what you fight for, but I can't watch anymore because I don't agree with what you're saying because I believe in something. So, I mean, that makes sense. If you don't believe what the rabbi's saying, that makes sense. But it seems to me that a lot of people are made uncomfortable if you challenge a security belief. And that's what I spend my time doing. In fact, I asked, I said, the other thing the person said, what I said in that tape was, I try to convince people to believe certain things. He said, that's terrible. Why are you trying to convince someone to believe a certain way or something that they don't believe? Why would you try to get them to believe something else? I said, isn't that my job? Isn't that what rabbis and ministers do? They try to get people to believe like in Jewish values or ideals or to be inspired by concepts that might be a little different. I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. So a lot of people don't want to, tell other people that I think this makes sense. But what I do, just to make it very clear, I put my views out there, mostly that I got from my dad and from Judaism and science. And I put the views out there and I offer a point of view. And everybody's free to embrace it or not or challenge it. But
Right.
that's what I see my job is doing. Anybody want to comment on all of that, or do you want to get into some current events? Because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
I just have one thing to say about that. My mom, who is deceased, has a brother and a sister still alive, my Aunt Fran. And I was over at her house not all that long ago, and her husband was sitting in the living room and we were cleaning up. And when Fran was finished doing the dishes, she wipes down the sink. And she was telling me this story. She says, Shelley he asked me once, why do I wipe down the sink? And she says, because my mother did. Well, when I went over there and I was helping her clean up at one point, and I didn't know this at the time. So after we finished, I just grabbed the dish towel after you put everything away and I wiped the sink. And Shelley says to me, well, why are you wiping the sink? And my only answer was because Nana did it.
Good reason.
That was
I'll conclude with this. My father never kept kosher, but he didn't eat pork or bacon either, just out of a nostalgia or I guess out of respect for his parents. He didn't. That's kind of like one of the most overt type of things. So he didn't either, and obviously I don't either because I'm vegetarian. But my dad never thought much of the rules of kashrut. He didn't think it made a lot of sense. And the problem he had with it, and I do too, is that many people feel that they do this in order to be Jewish. This is what it means to be Jewish, to eat certain foods, to say certain prayers, to use certain language, and to go to a synagogue sometimes. That's what it means to be Jewish. My father believed that those things are just the outer trappings. That's not a significant aspect of being Jewish, but people get confused and they think that's what it means to be Jewish, and therefore what really it means to be Jewish, they never get to. My dad compared it to looking at the frame of the picture and just focusing on the frame and not the picture itself. The whole picture is there and you don't see it. You're just focusing on the frame. So this is a framework to help people live a life of Jewish values. But if you're thinking, hey, being Jewish is just eating certain foods, then the important things about being Jewish, trying to make the world better, trying to be in touch with a spirituality, and trying to help others and being kind. If those things are overlooked because you're focusing on the food, then it's not serving a good purpose. And the other, what my dad used to say is, you might have heard me say this. He said that what makes you Jewish is not what you're wearing on your head. It's the thoughts that are in your head. It's not the food that you're putting in your mouth. It's the words coming out of your mouth. And it's not avoiding shellfish. It's avoiding the selfish. That's what makes you Jewish. And that's how I was raised. And these things, I see a lot of people thinking, well, this is what it means to be Jewish. And like, I'm thinking, you mean our ancestors went through thousands of years of bitter persecution and exile just so you could eat certain foods? That you think that's what it was all about? I don't think so. I think they had a higher purpose, like a vision of what the world should be, and let's try to make that happen. By the way, I do have to tell you also that Gloria wrote an amazing book that I read about her son. It's a beautiful book, and maybe you could make it available to the congregation, because I think other people might be interested too. But I had the pleasure of reading it, and it was really quite extraordinary to see the love of a mom for her son and vice versa. It's really inspiring. So I thank you for sharing that with me. Anybody else? Oh, you want to talk about current events? Somebody bring what's going on in the world that you want to talk about. Anybody?
Are we going to talk about the Torah at all?
We did. The whole Torah reading was about Shmini. It was about sacrifice. It was about the sacrificial system. It was about it was sacrifice, and mostly it was about keeping kosher. It was what foods you can eat, what foods you can't eat, and keeping kosher. They also have a story that I already reprieved from before. It occurs twice with the death of Aaron's sons, but there's not much redeeming there, so I didn't feel the need to go into that. It's mostly the whole point of the chapter is the rules of kashrut.
So I have a question. I thought there was nothing in the Torah specifically other than that one line that says, don't boil a goat in its mother's milk.
Right. That's right. Well, there's a lot of different rules about kashrut. The part about you can't mix milk and meat, that stems from the passage that you read. Yes, don't boil a calf or a goat in its mother's milk. That was considered to be barbaric, and the Canaanites did it. So when they came into Canaan, they were told not to do that because they didn't want them to become cruel and barbaric. In my opinion, slaughtering animals and spilling their blood all over the altar, that's kind of cruel too, but to them that was fine. But boiling a goat in its mother's milk, that really got their goat. So they didn't want to do that one. But the other rules, like what animals can you eat and what animals can't you eat, and how do you distinguish between the birds that you can eat and the birds that you can, and the four-legged creatures and the flying creatures? How do you distinguish all that, and how do you separate it out, and how long do you have to wait? I mean, those things are in the Torah. As it turns out, the Torah has the first inkling of this, and then these rules are further refined over the centuries and millennia. So when I ask where do these rules come from, they're not, a lot of them aren't in the Torah. A lot of them were developed hundreds of years or thousands of years after the Torah was written. But a lot of the rules about what animals are considered kosher and not, that comes from this Shmini.
So what saving grace out of this parsha will be able to be read on Friday night then, or discussed on Friday night?
Well,
because it doesn't sound like there's much.
You have to use a little creativity. Let's just say this, that the Jewish people had a concept that everything they did should be sanctified and should be holy, including the food that you eat. That should also be sacred. I will say this about the rules of kashrut, which I should have mentioned before, is that some of the rules about how to slaughter an animal were designed, and the purpose was nothing other than sparing the animal suffering and pain to make it as quick and painless as possible, giving them the benefit of the doubt. In the ancient days, they were clueless to how to eat a balanced diet so they could be healthy without eating meat. And I don't even know that they had access to all the different foods that we have, so I don't know how they would even do it. But they recognized that there was something special or sacred or sentient in these animals, and so they made rules to spare the animal suffering. Sadly, the orthodox and the rationale or the purpose behind the rule is completely lost on them. All they know is this is what you do. You buy kosher meat. They don't know. The sad thing is, the very sad thing is that these rules were meant to spare the animal suffering, but the way they're carried out over the millennia, they've been changed around, and the Orthodox have so many different rules that kosher slaughter is more painful to the animal than non-kosher slaughter. It's the exact opposite, because they have no idea why they're doing it, and frankly, they don't really care. It's just a tradition. They pick up the tradition, they do it. And that's another thing that I find highly offensive. You don't even know why you're doing it, and you're actually doing the opposite of the original purpose, and you're just doing this mindlessly, and it's causing animals more suffering, and it's not nutritionally, a lot of the stuff they eat isn't so good either. So that's my take on that. But the redeeming thing you asked is that it was designed so that everything they put in their body would be sacred, because the body is sacred, and they wanted food that went into their body to make them sacred, and they wanted to spare animal suffering. Those are all very, very good motivations. And we can do that today, I think, by not eating things like veal or factory farmed animals or going vegetarian. We can still try to make our bodies holy by being careful about what we're putting into it, and also eating healthy food. Our idea of what makes the food sacred or acceptable is maybe different than theirs, but the principle is the same. What we put in our body should be sacred, and we should think about it and make good decisions. So that's what's redeeming about it. But yeah, thanks for asking the question, because sometimes I just look at the fallacies, and I don't. Every Friday night, though, if you come to Shabbat, even a passage which I think doesn't have much redeeming qualities to it, I'll find it and I'll share that. I might also share things that aren't so salutary, but I'll find it. So in the world today, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. That the judge's decision in Texas that outlawing mifepristone, I think that decision will be overturned. I think it's just so bizarre and so crazy that I don't think it's going to last too long. So I don't think we're going to have to provide these pills to people, but you can never tell with these courts. They're highly partisan. The judges were chosen because of politics, so you can't tell what's going to happen. Anybody want to weigh in on that?
No, I wanted to say something else, though. I want to make sure that everybody knows about what we're doing next week before they sign off. Next week, we're going to have a live and in-person Touch of Torah at the Grand Villa. I am going to attempt to, I believe I'm going to be successful in Zooming it there. And we're going to have a guest, Rabbi Akiva Gersh from Israel. He's on a tour through Jewish Veg. I think it's pronounced right, Rabbi?
Jewish Veg.
Jewish Veg. And they're sending him on this tour. One of his first stops is Florida, and he's having a discussion with Rabbi about the Torah, the upcoming Torah, as well as Judaism and an animal-free diet. And he's a very exciting and engaging educator. And Jewish Veg is sending him on this tour of the United States, and we get to have him with Rabbi Barry. So it's really exciting. It's at 7:30 next week, so it won't be at 7. And it will be live at the same place that we do Shabbat, at Grand Villa of Delray West. And I think we're really fortunate to have this rabbi with Rabbi Barry next Tuesday. So it's exciting. So
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that now, because it will be a really good event. The guy's really inspired, and he's very knowledgeable, and it'll be a very lively discussion. And I'm sure he'll bring up the rules of kashrut and the original purpose behind some of these rules, was kindness to animals. So come on out; it should be great over at Grand Villa. We're having a lot of fun over at Grand Villa. I lead current events. In fact, I'm doing current events tomorrow night. And they do all this stuff at 7:30. So if you want to come out to Grand Villa for current events, we have a very lively discussion. It's really good. So come on out. We're doing the Holocaust program is, why don't you tell them about that too, Sharon?
okay, so this Sunday, that will not be recorded. I might try to record it, but it's not going to be on Zoom. That's going to be at the Grand Villa on Sunday, April 16th at 3 p.m. And we were fortunate enough to have 3 teenagers that have interviewed Holocaust survivors. One of them is Rabbi Barry's son, Brandon, who is valedictorian for his high school graduation year this year. And I think it'll be very exciting because these students are engaging in secondary witness program. In other words, they're hearing the Holocaust from the Holocaust survivors firsthand, and then they're going to be sharing their stories with us as the audience. So it's really exciting, engaging the next generation in these things, and them being able to hear it firsthand and being able to share it firsthand with others. So that, along with some poems, lighting of candles. It'll be a really beautiful service program that we have on Sunday. Rabbi Barry and Cantor Carroll will be there to provide some beautiful words and beautiful music as well. So come on out at 3 o'clock. It'll be about an hour, maybe an hour and 15-minute program.
Yeah, it should be really good. I was telling Brandon that when he's 80 and he's talking to little kids, they're going to think like, wow, you talk to somebody who's in the Holocaust. That would be like us talking to somebody who's like, who fought in World War I or something like that. I mean, it's just so long ago, and the survivors are going quickly, as everybody knows. And the person that Brandon spoke to is 99 years old.
Yep.
And he wasn't as sharp as he was when he spoke in the Steven Spielberg project. I saw his interview, but he is very moving. And so I'm curious to see what Brandon's going to make of that. But he'll be there Sunday at 3 after his basketball game at 10 o'clock. So it'll be a full day. I guess that's about it.